Greetings, my wonderful students. Today we discuss the Constitutional Convention. The convention begins. Organization. Each state would have one vote in the convention. Meetings could only be held if at least 7 states were present. Sessions were closed to the press so delegates could speak freely. Now this is because a lot of times people come up with various ideas, some of them good, some of them not so good, and some that would definitely not be popular. If they were all allowed to be spoken to the press, people would be more scared to speak up about their various ideas for fear they would be unpopular. Key agreements. They came together to revise the Articles of Confederation, but that plan was quickly abandoned. Instead, many delegates agreed that a stronger national government was needed, and it was also agreed to split the power of the national government into 3 branches. The Virginia Plan, basis of the compromise. This was originally brought by James Madison, who will become known as the father of the Constitution. He had spent months reading and researching various governments, different confederacies, the Roman Republic, ancient Greece, and came up with this plan of government. A strong bicameral legislature, 2-house legislature. The lower house would be chosen by the people. The upper house would be chosen by the lower house. So imagine if the House of Representatives chose the Senate. Representation in both houses would be by population. There would be a strong executive, but they would also be chosen by the legislature. Again, so imagine if the president were chosen by Congress. And a national judiciary would be appointed by the legislature. So Congress would appoint the judges. Now the New Jersey plan was a counter-proposal to the Virginia plan. It wanted to amend the articles, not get rid of them. Smaller states would keep equal representation with larger states, so there wouldn't be any houses chosen by population. Congress would just get a few more powers. So the Great Compromise. There would be a bicameral legislature. The upper house would have equal representation for the states, the Senate, which is what we have today. The lower house would have representation based on population, which is the House of Representatives. A census was authorized to count the population of the states for representation. Southern states wanted slaves to count as people for representation. Northern states did not. The compromise stated that every 5 slaves would count as 3 people for the purposes of representation, giving the South an advantage in the House of Representatives. The North wanted Congress to have control over trade. The South feared that their exports would be taxed and the slave trade would be banned. So the compromise stated that Congress could have control over trade, but could not ban the slave trade until the year 1808, and Congress could not tax any exports. Congress obviously gained the power to regulate interstate trade and trade with foreign nations. Now the Constitution stated that slaves escaping to free states must be returned to their masters. The South would never have accepted the Constitution if it interfered with slavery. In order to get the Constitution ratified, the Founding Fathers basically never dealt with this very contentious issue. Once it went through Congress, it needed to be ratified by the various states, and 2 groups came up, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Now the Federalists argued a strong national government was necessary or anarchy would occur. They wanted a powerful federal government and said a Bill of Rights isn't even needed because federal power is limited and many of the states have a Bill of Rights. Anti-Federalists feared the government would gain too much power and take away the rights of the people. They opposed ratification and wanted to keep a weak federal government. Now, in order to get the ratification, the Federalists promised the addition of a Bill of Rights. And they made speeches and wrote papers to convince people to accept the Constitution. These are called the Federalist Papers now. The Bill of Rights was added to gain more support, and in many states, the ratification was bitterly close. The new government began with ratification by New York and Virginia, and the first capital was New York City. And that is the end of this slideshow.